Resident Evil 4 is a game I've played and mastered countless times, but nothing changed my perspective on it more than speedrunning. Seeing a game that usually takes over 14 hours to beat, completed in under 90 minutes was mind-blowing, especially because it wasn't the hardest difficulty with no special weapons or costumes. After watching these runs for a while and even attempting some myself, I think it's time to break down what actually happens on the speedrun, how the strategies work, and why do they save time. Keep in mind that this isn't a guide or a tutorial. That would take a lot more time and I don't think I'm qualified for that. Instead, I'll be analyzing Joker's run of 1 hour and 22 minutes and 10 seconds, which is the current world record, or at least at the time of making this video. So without any further ado, let's get into it. To start off, I must tell you about the rules that speedrunners follow in the main category, which is New Game Pro. First off, it must be done in a single segment, meaning that it has to be done in one sitting from start to finish, and without any saves except the last one when you finish the game. And all runs must start from the New Game menu and not New Game Plus, because that is a different category. And the use of the Special 2 costume is prohibited, because it gives Ashley the armor, along with mods and trainers. And all the runners are ranked according to the life split timer, and they use a custom-made load remover to remove loading times and get accurate and competitive timing.
Resident Evil 4.
The run starts as soon as you choose which costume to use, and Joker starts by skipping the first cutscenes and rotating the pistol in his inventory, so all items he'll take in the next chapters are gonna be exactly where he wants them to be. Ideally, he'll always have a grenade in here, and we'll see later why. And here is a place for weapons like the shotgun we'll get on the next room and the rocket launcher, and this area on top is for ammo, and the rest are for grenades. Then he runs directly to the first house, and this guy usually dies with 4 shots, but the runner always makes the first shot a headshot, and that's because there's always a chance to get a critical shot when shooting the head. And when that happens, you can kill him with 1 shot instead of 4, and that saves both time and ammo. But most of the time it takes 4 shots to kill this guy. And right after the 4th shot, the runner gets moving again. And as soon as the enemy dies and finishes his death animation, we get a cutscene, so the runner times his reload right before the cutscene starts. Because if you get a cutscene in the middle of a reload, it skips that reload animation and you'll have the weapons loaded and ready to go. So by starting the reload right before the cutscene and then skipping it as fast as possible, it's almost like you get a free reload, saving like a second or so. And then he jumps out the house and heads to the next room. And he shoots this crow on his way because it always drops a grenade. So he takes it, equips it, and then he runs to the end of the room. And you'll see that most of the time he'll be running with a grenade or a rocket launcher or nothing equipped. And that's because in these 3 cases, Leon has a different running animation and it's slightly faster than the normal one. And it won't cost much time to change the weapon and equip the nade, especially because it's right next to the handgun. So it can be equipped very fast. And another thing that runners do a lot is quick turning. And no, it's not this one. It's when the runner aims the camera in the way he wants to go, and then he hits the aim button so Leon instantly turns this way. And this is really helpful because this game is pretty old and it has tank controls. Moving on to the village, this part was a nightmare for anyone who played this game for the first time, because in order to progress you need to either survive for 4 minutes or kill 15 enemies. And of course, this being a speedrun, we have to kill those 15 enemies as fast as possible. So in here, Joker shoots this guy a few times to kill him. And like before, you can try to shoot him in the head for the chance to get a critical shot. But usually only keyboard and mouse runners attempt this because it's very difficult to do with a controller. And the reason they shoot this guy is that when he dies, a group of enemies spawn, and we want them to follow us. And once he's dead, the runner proceeds to the house with a shotgun, dodging any enemies along the way. And as soon as he walks in the house, he skips the cutscene in here, then throws a grenade through this tiny window, killing the group of enemies that followed us, giving us a total of 7 kills so far. And that results in another group of enemies spawning. Then the runner takes the shotgun and grenade and money in here, and he kills one of these 2 enemies. And then he goes out and stands near the ledge. Then he throws an insane grenade throw that lands right above the group of enemies, killing them and giving us the kills we need to progress. And in here, there's a small time window before the ending cutscene starts. So Joker uses this time to get down and into this house and get an incendiary grenade in here. And then he just reloads right before the cutscene, so he gets a reload skip. And Leon is always teleported right here after the cutscene, so he just runs out from here. I was really surprised by how much happens just in the first 2 minutes of the game, but this run is pretty hard in the beginning, and runners reset in here a lot. And I also forgot to talk about the drops you get from enemies and boxes, because some of them are static drops that always have the same thing, like the grenade on the first crow and the incendiary grenade box, and some are random, and usually in the beginning of the game, the only random drops we take are money drops. And some people don't even bother taking it because villagers don't drop that much compared to the castle and island enemies. And they mostly rely on treasures to get money. So moving on to the next room, he just runs to the next door, and in here we get the Bowler QTE or Quick Time event. And this doesn't seem to affect the run that much, but when you get the prompt to dodge, If you do it early, you'll end up far behind this tree, and then you need to go around it, costing you some time loss. But if you wait till the last second before you dodge, you'll end up very close to the tunnel and completely avoid the tree, and that's what Joker did. This can save you around a second or so if done correctly, but if you die, it costs you like 20 seconds. And if anyone dies in here, it's an instant reset because 20 seconds is just a lot to lose in the beginning of the game. And then you just run past everyone until you finish this chapter. This chapter starts by a cutscene followed by a QTE, before finally taking control of Leon, and the runner skips through those pretty fast. And as soon as he takes control of Leon, the enemies of this room start moving. So he has to move fast, because if he's too slow, enemies will be in very weird positions, and they'll probably end up slowing him down or killing him, thus killing the run. So as soon as he walks in here, he skips the merchant cutscene, and we take the rifle ammo in here because we need that much later on in the game, and it helps to organize the inventory like we said before. After walking out, he goes down here and we start seeing what we call RNG, meaning that it's random and depending on what happens you'll have to do things differently. Sometimes it's on small things like which way an enemy goes. Depending on what RNG you get, this guy can attack you, forcing you to stop for a second, and sometimes you can just run past him. And other times RNG can really make you lose the run. Anyways, he gets in and climbs up the ladder, and we see the first use of iframes in here, which refers to invincibility frames. Basically, when Leon is doing an animation like climbing ladders or fences or opening doors, he can't take damage, so the runners use this to their advantage. Now he takes the first piece and jumps down, but depending on RNG and if he's too slow, he'll get annihilated in here, which was what happened unfortunately. But ideally you can just run past one enemy on the bridge and then go to the other piece. Here we just bait an attack from this guy, get the second health and jump down and get out of here. In this room there is an enemy manipulation. Right after this door, if you run in this exact line and open the door from the right side, this enemy will always do this pointing animation at you, and you can just run past him. However, it's not that easy to do, and when it doesn't work, you'll have to react to this guy. Sometimes you can dodge him, sometimes you have to shoot him before passing, resulting in a time loss. After reaching this window, if you simply just jump through, Leon would end up behind these covers, and you'll have to wait for the dynamite guy to shoot, which is very slow. So the runner breaks the window with his knife and runs towards the door. And he times the explosion of the dynamite with the door opening animation to get iframes. And then he just runs past more people in here, making sure to avoid this guy's axe. Then he gets the treasure in here and goes up to the first puzzle. And of course he knows all the puzzle's answers beforehand, so he can do them pretty fast. But they're mostly pretty easy, so he gets the key in here and runs to the door, and that brings us to the chapter end. As soon as the chapter starts, you run down and out the house, and you just run past the chainsaw guy and these enemies without a problem. But the end of the room is where you have to be careful and watch which way enemies go, and it's just RNG. On this run, Joker didn't have to shoot the enemy in here, but sometimes you need to. And the hard thing is that you don't have much time to see which way they're going, so you'll have to react fast. And in here you can just squeeze your way through these enemies without getting hit. And in this room you just run down and shoot the lamp in here to spawn the treasure and take it. And then we meet the merchants. Now he can just sell the treasures he got so far, and usually he also sells the first aid kit, but he already used it in one too. And that's completely fine because selling the treasures will give him 30,000 pesetas. Plus some extra money drops he got to make up for the first aid. So he's doing pretty well on money, and he just buys a rocket launcher with it. As soon as we exit this place, he moves 2 steps and shoots a nest on top to get a grenade. And then he just runs past everyone. In this room, all crows have money except one of them has a flash. And they don't really have much money, so we just shoot this crow to get the flash and move along. In here there's another boulder QTE, but this one doesn't have a time saving trick like the last one. And after it's done, he gets a grenade in here and proceeds through the room, shooting wire traps and dodging enemies if necessary. And then we reach the first RNG heavy room, the Lago. This boss takes 12 harpoon shots to die on this difficulty, and you have to avoid the logs on the lake in addition to his attacks while throwing harpoons as fast as possible. And it has 3 major patterns, which are selected by RNG. The first one is the fastest, and we call it no dive. The second one is 7 seconds slower, and we call it a late dive. And the third one is the slowest and hardest, so basically it's the worst, and we call it early dive, and it's 15 seconds slower than the good pattern. So the fight always starts the same. The runner shoots a harpoon right at the start of the fight, then avoids some logs on the way, then follow up with 2 more harpoon shots. And when the Lago dives and comes back up again to attack, depending on which way he dives, the runner either moves his boat slightly like he did just now, or he stands still. and then throws the 4th harpoon and avoids more logs before throwing another harpoon. And after that we'll see which major pattern we'll get. If he dives now, this is an early dive. Not only will you lose time from his dive, you'll also have to wait for him to pop up again, and when he does, you'll have to shoot him before he gets to you. And usually you'll be able to land 3 shots on him before he goes under your boat. And if the runner is really good, he can even get 4 shots. And I heard that some people manage to get 5 shots, but I think that's just a myth. And after he goes under your boat, you just finish this fight by ear, avoiding the logs and shooting as many harpoons as you can. But if he doesn't dive in here, which is what happened on Joker's run, he goes to the far right to avoid getting staggered. And as soon as the monster comes back up again, he starts throwing as many harpoons as he can in here. If he dives now, it's the late dive, which is the second fastest. But if he doesn't, this is the best pattern. And this is what happened to Joker, so you can just dodge his attack, shoot him twice, and the fight is over. After that we get a button mash in QTE, then the chapter ends. As soon as the chapter begins, he skips the cutscene and gets a flash in here, then he just walks out. Now we get our first encounter with the Plagas, but he just runs past it. Then he shoots down these boxes and this barrel to get a grenade. In here, runners do things differently, depending on what version or what FPS the runner is playing at, because that can change many strats throughout the game. If it's the Steam version and the runner is on 60 FPS, which is the main category, you just go towards the lever, and when you lower it, you head down taking this treasure along the way, and beating 2 of the enemies who spawned in here. But on console, there's a skip you can do to get out of bounds. But if I'm gonna talk about all the 30 FPS differences, that should be in its own video, so if you wanna see that, just let me know down in the comments. After that, the runner just continues his way to face El Gigante, which goes down very quickly with a rocket launcher. Then he just takes his money and heads to the church. And right before he arrives, we meet the dogs, and as long as he doesn't run directly towards them, they won't do anything. And after you get inside the church, the puzzle answer in here is 2-3-1, meaning he rotates the first one 2 times and the second one 3 times and the last one 1 time. And every runner knows this beforehand so he can do it as fast as possible. Then we get Ashley in here, and you'll see that the runner tells her to wait, and just leave her upstairs because as soon as you get in here, you trigger a cutscene that teleports Ashley right back to Leon. And the chapter ends here. The runner starts by moving back a bit to get on the stairs, then he leaves. In here we just run to the right of the wagon, and one of the enemies gets really close to hitting Ashley, but he shouldn't be able to get her. After that he just keeps going, and having Ashley with you can slow you down sometimes. And here is the first example because she takes a while to climb the ladder, so he waits for her to catch up before the door closes, making her even slower. And if you try to leave too fast, you'll get a prompt that you need to wait for Ashley. So the runner has to time it right so he won't lose any time in here. In here you can just run past enemies and traps, but you'll have to watch how enemies move in here. If you get a perfect pattern, you can just run past everyone in here, but if you don't, which is what happened to Joker, you'll have to bait out an attack from this guy and it's just RNG. Then we head to the farm and we see another enemy manipulation in here. When Joker gets close to the window, he tells Ashley to wait then follow him again, and this aggroes some enemies. Then he climbs up the ladder, leaving this guy stuck behind it, and giving Ashley enough time to pass through. But sometimes this guy realizes that he can't grab you through ladders, and he goes around the ladder to grab Ashley. And that loses you 14 seconds, and in some cases that's enough to kill the run. And it's just RNG. Luckily it doesn't happen all that much, but it's really annoying when it does. Then Joker just heads out the window, and because he aggroed the enemies earlier, they are on the left side, giving us plenty of room to pass through. But if he didn't, they would be blocking the way. Now he goes down with Ashley, and he baits an attack from this guy, and he tells Ashley to wait relatively close to the door, so she doesn't walk into a trap like a freaking idiot. Then he heads out. And now cabin. This part was very difficult on the first playthrough of the game, and on a speedrun it's no different. You have to either survive for 4 minutes or kill 14 enemies to progress. And of course we're gonna have to kill those 40 enemies as fast as possible. And that's when all the hand grenades you've been collecting come in handy. As soon as the cabin fight starts, the runner moves close to the window and he uses the knife to break the window and hit Lewis. This way Lewis gives us an item. Then he takes this green herb and goes for this window. He shoots the barrier, knocks this guy down, and shoots the other one just to slow him down. Then he takes the item Lewis gave him, and it's usually a handgun ammo, but if you get a grenade, this strat would change a little. Now he waits for the other barrier, and waits for Lewis to finish killing the enemy. And when he's reloading, he aims at him so he stops shooting enemies and let them get in. And we keep aiming at him so we can get him grabbed, because when enemies grab Lewis, they become passive towards Leon. So he runs back, throws a grenade beneath the table, and that kills all the people in here. And that's 10 kills so far. Now he takes more pistol ammo before taking the yellow herb in here, and then he shoots an enemy through this window. And the logs outside don't have any collision, so he just shoots the guy through them. Then he pushes Lewis a little, he aims at him and holds this guy back until the room gets filled again. Now he lets Lewis get grabbed again for the same reason as before, and he goes for the chimney and throws another grenade beneath the table to kill everyone in here, and that gets us to 22 kills. Then he does the same thing again. Keep in mind this explanation is simplified because the timing and grenades and positioning is very delicate, and a lot of things can go wrong in here. For example, when aiming at Lewis, sometimes someone comes from behind and the only way to know is to hear him say,
"Detrás de ti, imbécil!"
and he has to shoot him quickly then aim back at Lewis so he can get grabbed. After that we'll end up with around 33 kills, 34 in this case. So he goes upstairs, gets the grenade, then the flash, then the green herb, then the incendiary. And the order is very important, because the inventory has to be organized in a certain way. Now he throws the last grenade, and he opens the inventory. And he'll have the herbs lined up right next to each other, so he just combines them, then equips the grenade next to them. And that's cabin done in less than 2 minutes. After cabin ends, Leon is always teleported in here, and the runner just exits the room. And you'll notice that he collected a red, yellow, green herb combination, and that's because it sells for 10k. Now on this switch there are two paths. The left one is a room filled with enemies and 2 chainsaw ladies, and the right is a room with El Gigante. And the runners always choose the Gigante room, because it's much faster and easier. As soon as the Gigante spawns, Joker quick turns and breaks the chains on the door as fast as possible. And right after he passes through the door, he tells Ashley to wait in here. This way he can kinda use her to bait out an attack from El Gigante, because when Ashley is near the door, he takes a long time to break it. Thus giving us plenty of time to loot this room, and right before he breaks the door, he tells Ashley to follow him again. Then he just gets the key and gets out of here. Now we go for Gondola, and he just uses the pistol to knock down enemies. After that he just equips the incendiary and heads straight to the big cheese boss fight. There's actually a way we can cheese this fight, because Mendez is really weak to fire damage, and we'll be using all the incendiary grenades we've been collecting so far. Now as soon as the fight starts, Joker immediately throws the first nade at Mendez, then he stutters a bit before walking to the second nade, so he doesn't get caught by the fire. And he goes right next to Mendez where there's another incendiary grenade in here, so he takes it and throws another incendiary at him. Now we get a cutscene where the boss transforms to his second phase. And Leon is also teleported in here, so the runner immediately throws a third nade and goes back to this corner. Now he waits for Mendez to get closer. So when he gets closer, Joker throws a nade between Mendez and this barrel in here, and that results in the damage from both of them combining to kill him instantly. So he takes his money and his eye, and he goes back to the village door. As soon as he walks in here, he tells Ashley to wait and moves forward a bit to trigger a cutscene that spawns the truck. Then he goes back to take the handgun ammo because he needs it to keep his inventory organized. And as soon as the truck appears, he uses the pistol to blow up the truck. And right after it crashes, he runs past it taking any money drops along the way. Starting this chapter, this is the second time we talk to the merchant. And in here the runner sells everything except for the flash grenade and some TMP and rifle and handgun ammo. Then he buys the semi-auto rifle and the TMP and a rocket launcher. And he runs to the next room. Now he takes the rifle ammo in here, then he uses the rifle to shoot one of the catapult guys so he doesn't shoot us later. And then he walks up the room, and sometimes he gets staggered in here, but he won't get hit. And now he wants to time his run right after the catapult shot to avoid getting staggered. And before he reaches the crank, he tells Ashley to wait. And that's so this guy goes for her instead of Leon. And as soon as he shoots the cannon, all the enemies in the room despawn, so Ashley gets free again. And he tells her to wait so she doesn't bump into him, slowing him down a bit. And once she's behind him, he tells her to follow again. Now in this room there are 2 swords in 2 different locations, and he has to change their places in order to progress. And if he stays in the room for more than a few seconds after the enemies aggro towards him, another wave spawn near the door, and it would make things a lot harder and much slower. So what runners do is to tell Ashley to wait as soon as he enters, goes up to the first sword and takes it, and before more enemies spawn, he runs back out the room then back inside again. And what this does is it resets the enemy's location and state, so they wouldn't be aggroed at him anymore. Then he goes to the second sword, replaces it with the first one. Then he goes upstairs again with Ashley, he puts the sword and leaves. The next part is pretty straightforward. He tells Ashley to wait near the door so she holds it open for him. Then he baits an attack from the shield guys in here. He gets in, takes a hail on the key, and then uses the barrel to clear his way out. On this room we meet Salazar for the first time, but of course he skips that cutscene and just runs up to the painting that has the key, and he tells Ashley to wait in here. Then he takes the key and goes to fight the gyro door, and right before he gets in, he takes the incendiary grenade here, then he equips the sniper rifle. And even though this part is pretty hard to do, it's pretty consistent, so if you don't mess up the execution you'll be fine. And this guy dies with 4 sniper shots to the plagas and 1 body shot. So Joker shoots the first plagas shot right after he breaks out. And when he gets hit, he does this spinning animation that allows Joker to add 2 more shots. One can either be a body or plagas shot, but the second one has to be on the plagas. And right after the animation is done, he runs to the wall and shoots his plagas again. So the gyro door starts spinning again, then he shoots him one last time with the plagas. He turns off the fire and takes the gyro door's money. And while moving back up towards Ashley, a wave of enemies spawn. And as soon as one of them gets close to coming out from here, Joker tells Ashley to follow and wait. And that gets the attention of the guys in here, so he's able to run past them. Then he tells Ashley to follow him again, leaving the enemies to blow themselves up. Then he heads towards one of the hardest rooms in the game, Water Hall. He starts by moving a bit forward and lining up an incendiary grenade throw to take down the line of enemies in front of him. Then he runs past them while looking away from the archers so they don't shoot him. But both Leon and Ashley can still get hit by the archers because it's mostly RNG. Either way, he continues his way down past this guy who will always point at Leon, giving him and Ashley just enough time to pass through. And once inside the basement, he tells Ashley to wait on one of the plates in here, and he sits on the other one to bring up the crank above. And he takes the shotgun shells in here, and now he has to adapt to whatever comes next, because sometimes a lot of people follow him into the room, and sometimes they all wait outside. Either way, he goes back up again through a horde of enemies, shooting and kicking whoever is on the way, until he reaches the crank while he tells Ashley to crank it, and he backs up and throws a flash. And ideally, he'll flash everyone in here, especially the archers, because they can kill him or kill Ashley. Then he holds the enemies back, and when the shield guy comes, he has to kick him and knock him down to remove his shield. And then he waits right next to the crank. When Ashley finishes lowering the bridge, scythe enemies spawn on top of the bridge, so Joker runs a bit to the right of the crank to attract all the enemies this way, then he goes the other way. And these guys can very easily kill the run. They can hit you or throw their scythe at you, and it can go through Leon and Ashley at the same time, and it leaves you at 1 HP, so you can easily die after that. So when he finally gets up, he just goes forward with Ashley to trigger a cutscene, and we finally get a checkpoint in here, so he can just reset the checkpoint, and that despawns all the enemies, finishing the first part of this room. Now for the second part. Joker goes to lift up Ashley on the left side, so she can crack the cranks and raise the bridges. And then he breaks these 2 vases, and goes to the left one because it has rifle ammo, and the other one has shotgun ammo. And he starts sniping everyone before they even get close to him or Ashley. And he takes this rifle ammo in here and shoots the rest. And this part is an auto-scroller, so even if you shoot the enemies really fast, you still have to wait for Ashley to finish using the crank. But in this case, the faster you kill them, the more time you have to loot the area in here. So he goes down first, taking a grenade and the green herb inside. And you might wonder why he didn't take the green herb earlier, but like I said before, sometimes the order of the items you take is important for inventory management. Now he shoots more guys coming towards him, and then he shoots this guy who's running towards Ashley. And he doesn't have to kill him, he only needs to shoot him so he stops running. This way he'll never reach her in time. Then he goes for the incendiary grenade and money drops in here, and lastly a first aid kit on this room. After Ashley is done, Joker will be waiting for her down here to catch her. And then he just walks out. In here we get separated from Ashley again, and we meet everyone's favorite enemy, Novistadors, or Novis for short. These are the bugs that turn invisible and later on in the game they'll be able to fly, and that's not even the worst part. The bad thing about them is that they're not well balanced. Sometimes they can just combo you to death and you'll have nothing to do about it. And they are so buggy they can even go out of bounds sometimes. And they are the most random enemy on the game, so it's really hard to manipulate them. So the first Novi we encounter is right here, and it's invisible of course. And to dodge it, Joker runs to the wall on the right, and he also turns his camera away from the Novi, because usually when you're not facing them, they try to do this punch attack instead of grabbing or kicking you, and he can just run past it. And down there are 2 Novis, and as soon as he jumps down, he turns the camera to the right again, and he runs to the ladder taking the Velvet Blue and the SMG ammo if he needs it. And ideally, he baits out an attack from them when he climbs up the ladder. And of course he has iframes in here, and if he doesn't bait out an attack, they will annihilate him upstairs. Now in this corner, he hugs the wall all the way through, and that gives another Novi in here enough time to get down from the wall and walk towards him. Yes, they can also walk in walls. But he just passes by it and drains the water, and after leaving this room, this part is really scary because it's RNG heavy. He can pass through without getting hit, but he can also get destroyed in here, and unfortunately he did get grabbed, which is one of the worst things that can happen. Luckily he didn't get comboed to death, so he is able to run out. In here you usually have to be a little careful on the first axe, but if you're able to pass through it, you can just run without stopping and you should be good to go. In the next room there is a lot of cultists praying, and if you alert them, they play an unskippable cutscene where the red guy points at you then points at the door. And after a few seconds, another cutscene plays where the door closes after the enemies leave. And in order to avoid this cutscene so we can save some time, he shoots the red guy, preventing him from pointing and triggering the first cutscene. And then he immediately runs to the next room before the enemies leave and trigger the second cutscene. Now we head to the machine gun room, and if you played this game a couple of times, you probably know that you can kill this guy before he gets on the turret. But the speedrun strat does this really fast. After climbing the stairs right before he jumps down, he flashes everyone in here. Then he equips an incendiary grenade, and he has to have only one, because if he has any more, Leon would do this animation where he brings out another one, and that slows him down, which will ruin the strat. Then he lines up the grenade and throws it, then immediately jumps down, and that burns the red guy right before the cutscene starts. So he falls down on the ground, and we get this weird cutscene that usually shows the red guy running, and if he skips it, the red guy will just teleport there. So he just lets it play, and after it's done, he equips the rifle and shoots him 3 times on the head, then takes the key and goes to the next room. And the puzzle in here is just 1, 2, 3, 4. And in the next room, he goes upstairs past these enemies, and he switches the first button to get the chest to pop up. And then he goes for the second one, which raises the bridge for the chest. Now he goes out and waits near this door, so he can bait the rocket launcher enemies to shoot their friends. Then he uses the TMP to stagger anyone on his way, so he gets the key and gets out. In this room, he just takes the treasures on the fountain and heads to the maze. And of course he knows the maze pretty well. At least he knows the fastest way to get both key parts in here. And there are also dogs that will chase you on the maze. But like our first encounter with them, they won't do anything if you don't look at them directly or run straight towards them. And the only scary part is after you get the second key and he has to stop and turn back towards the dogs. So he looks up to avoid looking directly at them, and this should work every time if done correctly. Then he just leaves and ends this chapter. This is the shortest chapter of the game, and as soon as the chapter starts he heads out the room towards the dining hall. And he uses the TMP to shoot the bell and the wine bottle in here to unlock the door for the next room. Then he hugs this wall to the left to get a flash in here, because when he moves slightly to the center of the room, a cage drops on him and a bunch of enemies spawn, including a Garador. So he takes the flash before that, then he just takes the treasure in here and shoots this like about 14 shots, then he just kicks the door open and leaves. Now this is the room with the free rocket launcher, but on a speedrun we don't take it because it loses a lot of time. So he just drops down, shoots these enemies to make them fall down or stagger, giving him enough time to use the lever and get back up again. And when he's on the bridge, those shield enemies can get him pretty fast, or sometimes they can just get stuck behind the door. Either way, he just runs past them, baiting an attack if needed. And runners used to shoot the lamp in here, so it burns enemies, and they also reload exactly after shooting it. And when they get damaged, they get a reload skip. But this is slightly slower than what they do now. After that, he just heads out to the next room, finishing this chapter, and he also equips the sniper rifle before he gets to the next room. Right after the chapter starts, you're spawned right next to Lewis's body, so he runs to shoot the chains and free Ashley. And he can shoot 2 chains with 1 shot, which is exactly what he did. After freeing Ashley, he gets a cutscene that teleports him right to the center of the room. Then he kills 3 more enemies and shoots this phase and goes to grab some rifle ammo and reloads. And he lines himself in this exact spot while Ashley tries to get out. Now this red guy spawns along with more enemies, and this red guy must die because he has the key, and if you kill other people while this guy is still alive, he would make more enemies spawn. So he shoots him on the knee as soon as he walks in, then he throws a perfectly lined up grenade to kill everyone in there. Then he just gets the flash and ammo, and if he's fast enough he can reach the spinel on the vase he broke earlier before Ashley exits the room. Now we take control of Ashley, and this part is pretty straightforward. he just runs past the first enemy, and he cranks the door just enough for him to squeeze through. In the next room there is this door puzzle which he does very quickly, and the second puzzle is pretty easy once you know how to do it. Then he gets the key items on the chest in here, and just run past everyone until he gets back to Leon and in this chapter. This is the longest chapter of the game, and in the start Leon always gets full HP no matter what his health was before. And this comes in handy, especially when the runner does that reload strat we talked about earlier, because you always want to be full HP, especially in late game. So the first room of interest is this lava room, and he runs down the stairs and lines himself to snipe this guy over there as fast as possible. And when you kill him you spawn a treasure, but this room can be very unforgiving because there is a carousel thing in the middle, and if you take just a little too long, you'll end up missing the cycle, losing like 7 seconds. And this can happen both when you're going in or when you're going out, so you can lose 14 seconds from very small mistakes. And when he gets on, he shoots this guy on his way, and he takes his drop if it's a money drop. And then he runs to the end of the room, where a fire-breathing statue spawns. But he shoots the chain twice before the statue gets in place, so that destroys it, unlocking a chest with the last key part. So he takes it and then takes the treasure and leaves. And he should reach just in time for the cycle. Now he heads back to the first wall using the trolley. Then he puts all the pieces and proceeds. Now he reached this room where he needs to get 2 grails to progress, and he starts with the closest room. In here he moves the statue in the most efficient way possible, and right before he walks in, he shoots the light on the ceiling to stop it from dropping down, and then he enters. And because he shot them before entering, he can just walk out of here. And then when Ashley gets trapped, he shoots these 2 enemies to unlock the door, and he takes the Queen's Grail and heads out to the next room. Now this room is really hard, and it needs a lot of skill to be done correctly. After he does the QTEs in here, he tells Ashley to wait outside, then equips the sniper, then takes the King's Grail. And as soon as he takes it, 3 knights spawn and the door closes. So he headshots all 3 of them before they can even reach him. And 1 sniper shot is enough to get the Plagas out, so he uses a flash to kill all 3 of them at once. Now he takes some shotgun ammo and a green herb drop, and he waits near the door for another 3 enemies to spawn. And he shoots as soon as they start moving, because before that they're invincible. He shoots the one on the left, then the one on the right, and lastly the middle one, because sometimes a glitch can happen and the shot just bounces off his head. Luckily it didn't happen this time, so he just uses a flash again, and he takes all of their money drops and leaves. In this room there are some enemies blocking the way, so he takes this flash and heads to the right, while telling Ashley to wait and follow over and over. This way he can aggro all the enemies this way, then he goes to the left avoiding all of them. And he puts the grails as fast as possible, and then he gets out just in the nick of time. Now he heads to one of the most random rooms, and one of the biggest run killers of the game. And that's because it's really hard, it's more because it's really dumb. And it's the second novice encounter. These enemies are so random and unpredictable, they can just grab you as soon as they spawn, and there's nothing you can do about it. Luckily this didn't happen this time, because if it did, this one would have probably died. So as soon as they spawn, he goes to the right to avoid getting grabbed. Then he heads to the lever, and after using it, he throws a flash to buy himself some time. Then he shoots the chains to drop the bridge. And then he's going to throw another flash to hopefully be able to get out of here without getting destroyed. Because it can, and it does happen a lot. And he barely made it this time. And the next room is the entrance to the clock tower. And there isn't much to say about this one, other than right at the end, you can either get staggered or get shot from the catapults, and that can lose you some time. But if you're lucky, you'll pass without getting hit, and it's just RNG. When he gets in, he shoots 3 wooden pieces to free the gears. And they're kinda hard to see from this angle, but he knows exactly where they are, and he can shoot them pretty quickly. Now he heads up to switch the lever, and on his way down, archers spawn in here, and you can easily get shot by them, and it's just RNG. So either way, he just continues his way down, and in here more enemies spawn. And he has to wait a certain amount of time before moving, in order for the strat he's about to do to work. And to get this timing correctly, he aims the rocket launcher, and as soon as he sees the scope, he starts running. And he runs in a very specific line, or else he'll get annihilated in here. And he did it perfectly, so he was able to pass through these enemies without getting hit. After he gets out, he moves towards the shield guys on the bridge, and more enemies spawn protecting the entrance. And one of those enemies has a rocket launcher, so if you take too long, he will shoot it. So Joker baits an attack from all those 3 enemies in here, then he baits an attack from these 2 enemies, and he can't back out a lot, or he'll get hit by the shield guys behind him. Then he just runs to the next room, which is the double Gyarados room. In here he needs to kill both Gyarados to be able to leave. And he also should kill one of these 2 enemies so he doesn't get grabbed while leaving. So he uses the rocket launcher he bought on the beginning of the castle, and he shoots anywhere between them. And that kills the first Gyarados and leaves the second one on 1 HP, because it has the armor. And then he uses the sniper to line up a headshot on this guy that also hits the Plagas on the back of that Gyarados. And then he just leaves the room, picking up a Spinel on his way out. Then we get a cutscene where Leon falls down a trapdoor, and then we continue from the sewers. So in here he takes the crown and the incendiary grenade, then he talks to the merchants. And the inventory changes again in here. Firstly, he sells the rifle and all of the treasures except the crown, because it will be combined with other pieces to get more money. Then he buys the striker to finally be able to do the disman glitch in here. And if you're not familiar with it, it's a glitch that makes Leon move at almost 150% of his speed. And this will help a lot throughout the rest of the game. And to do this glitch, he just needs to aim with the striker, and before the laser shows up, he switches to any other weapon. But there is a lot of things that can disable this glitch, and we'll see them soon. So after he buys the striker, he also gets a rocket launcher, of course, and he puts the striker in here because it needs to be the first selected thing when you open the inventory. This way he'll be able to do the disman glitch really fast. And also, there is a grenade 1 input away from it. And like we said earlier, running with a grenade or a rocket launcher has a slightly faster running animation. So if we disman and equip the grenade, Leon would be running at the maximum speed possible. And we call this incendiary a running nade, because it's only used for that. So we see Joker dismanning in here, because cutscenes and QTEs and getting hit and healing and aiming with the striker and opening doors, all of those things cancel disman, and he has to do it again. When he reaches Verdugo, we see the first trick he can use with the disman, so instead of doing the QTEs, he just steps back in the last second before he gets hit. And sometimes if Verdugo is gonna hit you from up top, you can just keep running, and with the disman he won't be able to hit you. And of course this is really hard to do, and he succeeded the first time, but he got hit the second time unfortunately. And after Verdugo finally appears to fight, he uses a nitrogen tank in here to freeze him, and then he just blows him away with a rocket launcher. Then he takes the first crown piece in here and just leaves, finally ending 4-1. So the chapter starts on this merchant's room, and he uses the green herb in here to heal to full HP, and you can try and guess what he'll buy on this merchant.
La mierda.
Anytime.
In the next room, with the disman you can run past most enemies, and instead of using the dynamite to blow the boulders in here, he can just shoot it with a rocket launcher because it's much faster. And he shoots behind it a little because he also wants to kill these enemies on the way, and he wants to break the barrels to get some magnum ammo and a grenade for later. Now it's the double Gigante room, and luckily we don't have to fight them, because we can just use the disman glitch to get out of bounds. This way we'll avoid the spawn triggers for the Gigantes, because as soon as you get near the door they spawn, so we just go around it. And it's actually possible to do this skip without the disman, but you have to be really fast to do it, and that's not really useful on this category. We encounter the Novies in here once again, but luckily this is the last time we have to see them. So Joker just takes the flash in here, and he runs to the cave with the first button. So he hits it and leaves, and he has to use the flash in here so Novies don't completely obliterate him. And even with the flash sometimes they do, and like we said before, don't forget that they can go out of bounds, so you can get memed anytime in here. Now he heads to the second cave, and he almost got hit in here because this guy isn't supposed to be in here. But like I said, they're the most random enemies on the game. Now he uses the striker to kill those Novies on the entrance, and usually, Novies die pretty quickly if you shoot them while they're flying. So he hits the second switch in here, and he leaves facing the camera away from the Novies so they don't grab him. And with the disman, he should be able to run past everyone in here. Once he reaches this door, he just runs without stopping, and he won't stop until he reaches the exit, where he gets the second crown piece and goes up ending this chapter. In here, he just runs to the crank and opens a way to the mines and leaves before the enemies reach him. On the mines, he runs past everyone, and he uses the grenade he got earlier to kill this guy and break a door near him. Now he goes up and gets the key and runs out, and since he broke the door, he doesn't have to open it in here, causing him to lose the disman glitch. So he just runs to the door, combines the treasure parts in here, and uses the key to get to the next room. This is another room where the roof drops on you. And it's not like the first one, you can't shoot the lights before you enter. And when the roof starts dropping, a few spider plagas things spawn to make it harder for you. And he succeeds in doing it. Now he just leaves the room. This is the minecart section of the game. And in here, thanks to the disman glitch, you can just go through it skipping most of this section. And he just runs to the end. In here, he just takes the key and climbs up the ladder. Now he just runs past the enemies in here, and he uses the key to open the door, then he heads up and in this chapter. We start on the Salazar statue room, and when he tries to leave, the bridges in here lower down and enemies spawn. So he shoots a few shots with the TMP to aggro the enemies, and then he runs up the ladder and reloads. And we see him shoot this switch in here, and that makes this arm go up and stop moving, and the second one will start moving instead. So exactly after he shoots, he jumps over to make it just in time. Then he heads to the first lever and switches it, shooting anyone in his way. Then he goes the other way again, dodging and shooting any enemies on the way, and since he shot earlier with the TMP to aggro enemies, they climbed up this ladder so he can just go down and switch the second lever without anyone on the way. Then he just gets out of here. And on his way out, he gets this QTE to run from the statue. And the QTEs on 60 FPS are bugged. They require double the mashing speed of console or 30 FPS. And this one is the most broken one. That's why the runners use the turbo features on Steam or a hotkey that allows him to hold a button and that will automatically mash the button for him. And this is allowed because if you don't do this, runners would end up breaking their controllers and keyboards, and that's if they don't break their fingers first, seeing how much they run the game and how much they have to do these mashing QTEs. On the next room, he uses the Ditman to head up as quickly as possible, until he reaches the elevator. And we see Joker in here keeps aiming his knife at nothing, and that's because aiming the striker cancels the Ditman. But if he aims the knife and then he aims the striker as soon as he lets go of the knife, he won't lose the Ditman, and that enables him to shoot faster. So he shoots 2 archers in here, and he positions himself carefully on the middle of the elevator, and then aims towards the ground. And as soon as enemies drop, he shoots the ground, and the spray from the striker hits the enemies, causing them to fall down the elevator. This is much easier said than done, because it's really hard to line up your shots perfectly as he does, and sometimes enemies end up in the corner, and they'll be really hard to knock off. And if there are 2 or more enemies in the elevator, it stops moving, so he has to be fast, and he can't let anyone stay for too long. After that's done, he heads up towards Salazar, but we do have to talk to the merchant first, and you can probably guess what he'll buy.
What are you buying? Come back.
And now as soon as Salazar spawns, he shoots him 3 times in the eye and finish him up with a rocket launcher. Now he can just run to the exit, taking the 50k Salazar drops on the way. Then Joker heads down and gets a flash and talks the merchant in here to get yet another rocket launcher, and then he heads to the island, finishing this chapter. At the beginning of this chapter, there's a skip we can use. If he climbs up in here in a specific position and angle, he can go out of bounds, and then he heads to the QTE trigger location, and doing the QTE gets him back in bounds, skipping the mirrors area entirely. On the next room, he just runs past everyone and makes sure to dodge these enemies' rockets, and some people don't even bother doing that, and they just shoot or knife the guy. But this strat is much cooler. Then he heads to the next room, and not much happens in the next few rooms. He just takes a grenade in here and runs past everything until we reach the dynamite guys. And usually you have to kill them for the door to open, but using the Ditman, we can get in there before the door closes, and we don't have to kill them. Then he heads to the keycard room where he meets the first regenerator, but he just runs past him. And in here, people like to shoot the TMP to aggro another regenerator on the hallway, so he becomes easy to avoid. But Joker just runs past him to the freezer, where he upgrades the keycard and leaves without taking the scope, because we don't have the sniper rifle. And we won't kill many regenerators anyways. So he dodges another one in here and heads to the next room. In here, he takes another grenade, then he runs past more enemies. And he did get hit by an archer in here, unfortunately, and this can happen at any time because archers are really random. Now he just goes past Ashley's cell, and he gets a flash in this room before facing the Iron Maiden. And this guy has the keycard for Ashley's door, so he just shoots him with a rocket launcher to insta-kill him. Then he pushes him forward a little, before he finally dies and drops the keycard. Then he just runs back to Ashley's door, and he baits the enemies at the door, and then goes in to end this chapter. At the start of the chapter, he restarts from checkpoint, so the 2 enemies who were guarding the door despawn. Then he takes the shotgun ammo and heads out using a grenade to pass through the enemies in here. And in the next room, he presses the button and tells Ashley to wait. Then he runs past all the enemies in here. And even if Ashley gets grabbed, as soon as he reaches a cutscene trigger in here, she teleports right back to him. But he must move fast, so enemies don't take her through the door. Now in this room there are 2 Iron Maidens, but luckily we don't have to kill them. So Joker just runs past the first one, and after pushing this box, he tells Ashley to wait and follow to aggro the second one. This way he'll move closer to us and further away from the door. Then he just flashes him and push this crate and run out. Now we just run past more enemies, and this wrecking ballroom can be very scary sometimes. It starts by telling Ashley to wait at the top, then he goes down to switch the lever. And he lets this cutscene play on purpose. because he has to wait for the ball to get back on position before switching it again. And during this cutscene, enemies can't move, but the wrecking ball does, so he can just wait for the ball to get back without worrying about enemies. Then he runs towards these enemies to distract them from Ashley, and then he comes back to switch the lever for the second time. Then he flashes everyone in here because there is no cutscene now. And sometimes one of the enemies can follow him to the lever room and he doesn't get flashed, which is what happened now. And this can be really bad, especially if the big guy doesn't get flashed, because he can one-shot you. So he deals with his enemy and gets Ashley, and then hits the third and last switch. And he gets on the ball's way, because if done correctly, it can push him to the door through the wall, and that's slightly faster. Now in this room, he starts by telling Ashley to wait and follow to aggro a regenerator in here, and as soon as the door opens, he shoots his leg and runs past him. And he tells Ashley to wait on this door, so she can hold it open for him when he gets back, and he won't have to disman again. Now he presses the switch, and goes to bait an attack from this regenerator, then he proceeds to the next door, where he sends Ashley to open it, and you can just spam the follow button in here and she will go through the door and open it. Then he just heads to the exit. When he gets on the truck, we see him facing away from the enemies, and moving back towards them to bait an attack from them so they slow down. This way he can group them all together so they jump all at once, and he can kill them with 1 or 2 shotgun shots. Now this is the perfect time to get some money drops if he needs any. Then he just fights off a few more enemies, then he shoots the truck before it hits him. Then after a while he shoots it again and reloads the striker. Now he just uses the Ditman to run past everyone in here and bait in an attack if needed. Then he just switches the lever and go back to Ashley before enemies get to her. Now he just kills them and gets back on the truck. And he can also reset checkpoint as soon as he gets down, and that will despawn the enemies in here. But it's slightly slower, and I mean just a few frames slower, so he just kills them instead. When he's back on the truck again, he shoots a few enemies above him so they don't jump in the truck, then he kills the enemies following him. Or he slows them down, because he has to shoot another truck at the end. And if he has enemies with him, they wouldn't let him shoot it in time, and it will kill him, thus killing the run. So he has to be careful in here. And after the truck, he goes to the merchant, and you guessed it, he's gonna buy another rocket launcher. Then he runs out, finishing this chapter. The chapter starts by Sadler taking Ashley from us one more time. And there's 5,000 pesetas in here that the runner takes. And not much happens in here, he just runs past all enemies until he reaches Krauser's cutscene. And there are some QTEs in here so you can't skip it. And one thing I didn't mention earlier is that this game doesn't lose you if you press the wrong buttons on a QTE. You only lose if you don't hit them on time. And there are only 2 button combinations you can get. So the runner just spams both of them whenever it's time for a QTE. And after this fight, we reach the laser room. And he can just run past the first 2 lasers if he has a nade equipped. And the last one can be done faster if he just spams the open door button and he will instantly get the QTE, instead of waiting for the laser to come. Then he goes down the elevator towards the U3. And as soon as he walks in here, he gets a cutscene that teleports him in the cage with the U3. And there are a total of 3 cages. And to progress from each one, you need to press 2 switches in 2 different locations. So as soon as the fight starts, he dismans and runs past the U3 to the first switch. Then he runs back to the second button while avoiding an attack from him. And it's not as easy as it looks. Sometimes you can't just run past him, and even if you can, you have to be fast and know which way to go because you can easily get grabbed. And with this health, he can kill you very fast. Now on the second cage, we see him shoot both door buttons at the start, then he dismantles the nade. And that makes him faster. So he does this scary dodge again. And on the third and last cage, he can throw a grenade through this door and that opens the door from the other side. Now he can just press the button in here, and that saves us a lot of time, because normally you have to go from the other side and come back again while being chased by the U3. But now he can just hit the second one and he just runs out. Now he heads straight to the fight and he just rockets the U3, then he hits him one more time with a knife to finish him off and take his money. After that he just runs to the next room and past some enemies near the stand. Now he talks to the merchant for the last time. So he sells the crown and the TMP, and he buys the Killer 7 and 1 final rocket launcher. And we head to Krauser's boss fight. When the fight starts, he immediately shoots Krauser with the Magnum twice, because if he doesn't, Krauser will start shooting with either the bow or the TMP or grenades. So when he shoots him twice with the Magnum, Krauser jumps down and heads towards Leon. And Joker heads closer to the door, and as soon as Krauser jumps up, he shoots him one more time to make him leave. And when he leaves, he always throws a flash, so he times the door opening animation with a flash so he doesn't get staggered from it and lose time. Then he advances through, and in here, depending on what weapon Krauser uses, Joker either has to take cover, which is slow, or he just keeps running, which is what he did. And then he gets up in here, and there is another confrontation with Krauser. But again, the Killer 7 will stop him in 2 well-placed shots. and he times the reload with the flash to cancel the reload animation and save time. Then he uses the Ditman to do a small weird trick in here with the statue, so he only pushes it twice instead of 4 times. Then he heads to the final confrontation with Krauser, running past all the robots in here, because they can't hit him with a Ditman. And when he finally gets the second piece in here, Krauser spawns on his final transformation. And as you probably know, he is really weak to knife attacks. So Joker baits an attack from him, manipulating him to retreat to this corner. Then he uses the Ditman so he can knife even faster with it. Then he just unlocks him with a knife, and he aims for the head because that does even more damage, and he beats him in a matter of seconds. Now he takes the final piece and heads out, ending this chapter. This is one of the most random chapters in the game, and it can kill the run pretty easily, and it has killed a lot of runs and world records for many players, which is really frustrating because it's right at the end, so your best bet is to pray the whole time to not get memed in here. Anyways, as soon as the minigun starts shooting, Joker takes cover in here and he takes a heal for safety. And now he just waits for the machine gun guy to stop shooting, then he starts running again towards the left, because this is the fastest way. And when he gets up the stairs in here, there's a lot of enemies above, and he can easily get shot. And it's just RNG whether he gets shot or not, but either way, he just jumps down this bridge as fast as possible. Then he shoots this lock with the magnum to break it instantly, and open the door. And he can also get destroyed in here by either the archers, or the minigun, or the enemies up front. And again, it's just RNG like everything else on this chapter. And whenever he gets hit, he just heals and continues. Then he heads up the stairs and he should be able to get past through these enemies pretty easily with the Ditman. Then he ziplines and switches the lever to open the door, and he resets the checkpoint to despawn all enemies in here. Now he hits down and enters this door from the right side. This way he'll aggro a shield guy above. Now he just goes to the left and climbs up, and because we aggroed the guy earlier, he's already running towards Leon, so he can just run past him with a Ditman. Then we head to the first lever, switch it, and he uses the magnum to kill the turret guy and the dynamite guy if he didn't blow himself up. Then he heads towards the second lever, and he knives the rocket launcher guy to drop him down, giving us enough time to switch the lever and go back. And a lot of things can go wrong in here just by pure RNG. And when he jumps down, we see him pause in here to see where the shield guy is, because sometimes he's just waiting for you down here to hit you as soon as you get down. And like I said, a lot can go wrong in here, but luckily this time it went smoothly, and he finally gets out of here. And to make this room even worse, there's a glitch that can happen sometimes at the end of the room, which makes the game just crash, killing your run. And a lot of people had that, but luckily it didn't happen on this run, or else we wouldn't be breaking it down. And in here we just run through some empty rooms, until he gets the flash in here, and heads to the second war room. And this is also just as bad as the one before. It starts by heading towards the first door, knowing that you can get shot by almost any archer at any time, and it's just RNG. So he runs past these enemies to bait an attack from them, and after he reaches the door, he gets a cutscene that shows him the 2 switches he needs to use. Then he immediately uses a flash to blind all the enemies behind him, especially the red hat guy, so he can kill him and take the keycard he needs to turn the switches. And he doesn't shoot the barrel because he wants enemies to hold the door open for him, so he doesn't have to disman again. And then he climbs up, and sometimes there are enemies above, so he has to dodge that enemy. Sometimes there is 2, sometimes there's only 1, and sometimes there are none. And it's just RNG, of course. Now he uses the keycard to be able to press the 2 keys. So he just heads down towards the first one, and he dodges the enemies in here, and hits the first button, and he gets out somehow without getting hit. And then he just goes to the second button. And again, a lot of things can go wrong in here and kill the run. But luckily he was able to do it without getting destroyed. So he just jumps down and runs to the exit. And he can just go past the shield guys in here. And now the hard part is over. We get Ashley again one last time, and on this room, he uses a wait follow to aggro the guys in here and bait an attack, and then he goes to the next room. After he skips the cutscene in here, he just heads out, finishing the chapter. Now this is the ending of the run. He just heads out of here towards Sadler, and as soon as the fight starts, he uses the Killer 7 to shoot one of his eyes, then shoots the middle eye once with the Magnum. Then he backs away before shooting it with a rocket launcher he got on 5-3. And after dealing this much damage, Ada drops the special rocket launcher, and he just runs to pick that up, then he aims somewhere near Sadler and shoots. And that finishes him off. And even though the run still didn't end, you'll see people in chat already celebrating because the only remaining part is jet ski, which is really easy and 100% consistent once you know which way to go. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. And if you have any questions about the run, feel free to ask down in the comments. You'll find Joker's Twitch and YouTube channels in the description box below. And if you're interested in more RE4 content, be sure to subscribe because I've got more to come. A huge thanks to Joker for letting me use his run, and to the RE4 speedrunning community for their help in making this video. You'll also find a link to their Discord server in the description. And most importantly, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Ito sine. Ay, may uno po ko boludo. vågar det.